What's going on, boys and girls? I wasn't going to do a video actually during the international break, but I felt a little bit compelled to jump on and give my thoughts on what I find an interesting narrative that seems to be developing over the course of the last few days, which is that Arsenal must, and that Arsenal are now the favourites to win the Premier League. And it just, I don't know, it's just got me thinking that, look, I get it. Every fan thinks a certain way about how their team is perceived amongst, other fans, the general public, the media. But I've got to say, I honestly believe that Arsenal are kind of treated and judged somewhat differently to most teams. And look, you can say that's complete nonsense, and I'm not going to sit here and have an argument with you. It's just my personal opinion as someone who watches a lot of online content and media commentary around the Premier League and the clubs within it, and particular within the kind of title competing sides, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Manchester City, whatever it might be. And I just find it interesting, the way in which the conversation in recent days has shifted from initially whereby Liverpool were the out-and-out favourites, if they get Isaac, it's game over, you might as well give them the league now, to the point where now all of a sudden Arsenal have the best squad in the league. They've got everything they need. They have to win the Premier League this year. And all of a sudden, Liverpool are now being told that Liverpool are in this kind of transition period, that this is their transition season on the premise that they've signed a number of new players. And it's just like, it's very interesting. I find it very interesting how quickly things can change. And my argument with all of this is not to say that I don't think Arsenal should be considered the favourites or that Arsenal shouldn't be expected to win the Premier League, but I just think to say that any club, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, to sit here and say they must win the Premier League. If they don't win the Premier League, it's a failure. They must. I just don't get that. I mean, football, there's so many different things that can go on within a football season, from injuries to refereeing decisions to VAR decisions to management changes. I mean, there's just so many different variables that can go on within a season that I just don't see how anyone can sit there and say that one particular club must do this. And so, yeah, I just find it really interesting. Now, if I look at Arsenal on paper right now, it does feel like for the first time in a long time, there's not really many excuses for us Arsenal fans to kind of pull out of the bag to say why we haven't won the Premier League. Up until this season, a big thing has been around squad depth and the quality of that squad depth, and the fact that we've been unlucky with injuries. So last season, we were incredibly unlucky with injuries. We had injuries to some really key players, Saka, Odegaard, Havertz, to name a few, Jesus. We had some pretty big injuries, and we just didn't have the squad to cover those injuries. This season, for the first time, in my opinion, in a very, 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 very long time, we are finally in a position where we have a squad that allows us to handle injuries. And we've already seen that because, again, we've started the season and we've been unfortunately dealt some pretty harsh injury blows along the way. We've had Saka out, we've had Odegaard out, Havertz is out, and we haven't missed those players as much because we now have the likes of Madueke, who, by the way, is also injured now. But we've had Madueke to step in. We've had Eze to step in. And so we've had Mosquera step in when Saliba had an injury. So we are finally in a place now where when you look at our squad, you say we should have a squad that should be able to compete for not only the Premier League, but the other competitions. And so for me, that is a really big point of strength that we're starting this season with, and that fills me with a lot of confidence. Obviously, Arteta's been in charge of the club now for a number of years. The squad itself is relatively settled, despite the fact we have brought in a number of new faces this season. But overall, you feel like the crux of that starting 11 is pretty familiar now. They know each other, they know how they play. And so I think that's another big positive. And so, yes, I have really high hopes for Arsenal this season. But I also know how quickly things can change. And I also know how good the other teams are. So, for example, I don't think Chelsea have really showed their true colours yet, and I do feel like they are going to kind of build their way into the season. I think Manchester City are quietly going under the radar, and I think a lot of people have kind of turned their back on Manchester City, but I think the truth of the matter is they still have some unbelievable players in their team. Donnarumma, in my opinion, is probably top 2 goalkeepers in the world. Haaland is Haaland. Rodri, when he's back, is probably the best 6 in the game. So there's a lot of quality within that team, and that's without even talking about Pep Guardiola, who is undoubtedly probably the greatest manager we've ever seen in the Premier League, bar Ferguson. So again, Manchester City, another genuine threat. And then, of course, Liverpool, the current champions, the team who won the Premier League last season and then went out and had arguably the most impressive transfer window in terms of names, in terms of what they needed to do and what they actually did. Wirtz, Isak, Kirkes, Frimpong, unbelievable signings, Ekitike. So again, I just think it's funny how the narrative changes and how I feel like everyone loves to kind of put this pressure on Arsenal and say that they must. And look, don't get me wrong, I also feel like we must. I'm desperate for it. I'm hungry. I'm starving for a Premier League trophy. Trust me. But I also think that almost all other clubs, bar Liverpool, I actually believe that if you ask any fan of any other Premier League football team right now if they would like to be in Arsenal's position, they would say yes. Even a Manchester City fan. Even a Manchester City fan right now, I think, would say yes. If you could give me everything that Arsenal have right now, they would probably take it over what they've got. So I think what this is a little bit of jealousy. But what I'm really trying to say is, for me, I went through a really long, dark period where I had completely checked out. I'd lost all hope. It was rotten from inside out, and I was just completely disillusioned. So as much as I am desperate to see a Premier League trophy or a Champions League trophy come in through the door, I'm just really happy to have my club back. I'm really proud of what this club has kind of turned itself around to become. A lot of that is because of Arteta. And his guidance and direction to bring us back to this place of competing for the biggest trophies. And I do finally feel like Arsenal Football Club is one of the top clubs again. And so I'm just really happy to be back at that place. Now, of course, I want more, but I also know how bad it can get. And so right now, in a way, I'm just happy that we're back at the table, and that we're back being a real top team who people are scared of, and that we have the ability to be spoken of being able to win the Premier League and the Champions League and the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup. That makes me feel good. And so I want the big trophies this year, but I'm also just happy to be back at the big boys table. And I hope that continues for many more years to come. And hopefully this season we can get that dreaded trophy monkey off our back, and we can go from strength to strength. So yeah, like I said, not a lot of kind of, point to the video other than trying to stick up for my club and say that I think people are running a particular narrative in order to apply more unnecessary pressure on Arsenal and maybe direct pressure away from their own club. So yeah, take it as you will. That's my thing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.